Hey everybody, this is Tom with the Board Gamer. Today we're going to do a quick overview and review for this game. For the full how-to, click the banner above or the link in the description. Now let's get into it. Amalfi Renaissance is a 1 to 4 player game for ages 14 and up, with an average gameplay length of 60 to 120 minutes, published by Sylex and R&R games. Amalfi Renaissance plays over 4 rounds, or periods, where players will take turns sending out ships to different ports to collect supplies that can be used to discover locations, invited characters that provide bonuses such as endgame points, and or purchase artwork cards that provide immediate bonuses and points. At the end of each round, players must feed their boat crews and score for that round's decree. After 4 rounds, the game ends and the player with the most points wins. I was introduced to Amalfi Renaissance at Dice Tower West through a demo provided by Daniel of R&R Games. The combination of strategy with the absolute beautiful look of the game intrigued me so much I knew this was a game I had to buy. The table presence of this game alone is enough to draw a crowd. The gameplay of using your ships both as workers and resource holders really makes you think about every move and how best to optimize your play. But the ability to move your ship to a dock to help you out in tight spots keeps the game from feeling too rigid and mean. This is definitely a strategy game, but is it a strategy game that is right for you? Let's take a look at Amalfi Renaissance in a bit more detail and find out. I mentioned earlier how beautiful Amalfi Renaissance is. This is a standard game with a deluxe look if I have ever seen one. It has a dual main board and dual boards for each player board. This is great since it allows you to slot each lighthouse and ship in your shipyard. And these ships and lighthouses have amazing looking screen printed wood pieces. No expense was spared making this game. I learned this is a revamp of the original Amalfi game that was released in 2020, with new and improved gameplay and of course an amazing production upgrade. The cosmetic upgrade to move away from cards to tiles for private destinations was a really good idea, and just the revamping of the art helps the game stand out a bit more. But one significant add-on is the titles you can achieve as well as the starting cards. These components added direction to what was an open-ended game. You can do so many things in this game, but without direction, you can get stuck not doing anything at all. These help steer players towards a direction and look good doing it. Amalfi Renaissance is a game that is so simple to play, it can be a bit complicated. What I mean is the actions are quite clear, but managing when to do each action can be a bit more daunting of a task. This is the most apparent when taking the navigation action. In this game, the ships you have are both workers that travel and resource holders, but the same ship cannot do both. You can send a ship to a location, pay the cost of bread, if any, and move ships from your bay to the resource area, where they will be the resource holders until brought back to your bay. There are no physical resource. Each ship represents a number of resources. So when you do use them to purchase art cards or private destinations, you have to do a tiny bit of math, and if you have a card that gives you a discount on a certain type of resource, there is some additional math, but nothing more than a simple plus or minus here and there. This is definitely a game you can figure out how to play in your first playthrough, but you will get better every time you play. Personally, the first time I played, I only scored about 60 points. The second time, about 140, and the most recently I scored about 196 points. There is definitely a learning curve, less so for the rules themselves, but for the strategy in the game. Speaking of strategy, Amalfi Renaissance has very little, if any, luck. This is a strategy game, and you can improve with every playthrough just by understanding the game better and by watching the other players. The only thing hidden is your starting hand, but since each starting hand has a direction and it is displayed on your player board, you have a pretty good idea of what players are going to lean towards when playing. There are enough character and art cards so that luck of the draw is always there, but since you can concentrate on different things, You can just ignore them if they do not seem to fit in with your strategy. You will very rarely not have a move you can do on your turn unless you decide to play each turn without a plan or direction in mind. But again, that's what makes this a true strategy game. Amalfi Renaissance is a good-looking, easy-playing strategy game. If you need a game to replay often with loads of strategy, but is still very approachable, that is not a card game and not a giant box game, Amalfi Renaissance will fit that spot perfectly. This is also a game that gets better each time you play, since you understand the game better each time. Plus, with a stack of different titles, decrees, and starting hands, the different gold combinations change, making Amalfi vary from game to game. There are all excellent qualities for a game's replay value. So if you enjoy games like the original Amalfi, or just strategy games in general, I believe you will enjoy this game. The theme of Amalfi Renaissance is based on the history of Amalfi itself. They were a port town and they experienced, well, a renaissance. The people of the town went out and brought home goods to reinvigorate their coast. Just like in the game, discovering new places and bringing home resources which allow you to purchase or create art, books, and monuments. The art reflects the time period, and the Mediterranean map has an old cartographer feel to it. The theme is presented well, and it is worked into the gameplay. Now for how the game made me feel when playing. Like most strategy games, you always have the feeling of wanting more to fully complete your strategy. But this game allows you to get out of any bind you may have put yourself in, whether that be by placing a lighthouse, purchasing private destinations, or moving ships to your dock for extra resources. Another thing that made me feel more comfortable in the game is points are scored immediately, except for the end of game characters. But for the most part, you will always know your standing compared to the other players, so you can determine how much of a risk you want to take. And most of all, this game has so many options. So the directions given by the starting cards and individually scoring decrees really help you narrow the focus and help players feel less overwhelmed. All in all, just like the Amalfi Coast, I found Amalfi Renaissance to be filled with an abundance of beauty and fun. This board gamer says, not boring. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified about new videos. If you're bored now, click this for more games.